What's up, guys? Today's video is going to be talking about being patient. God hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't left you behind. You just gotta wait your turn sometimes, in life. And sometimes stressful things come and almost crashed. And you just gotta roll with them, and you gotta take them as they go to get through. Life's like a video game. There's a bunch of levels to it, almost. Everyone always says, oh, there's levels to this and to that. Well, there kind of really is in life. There really is truly levels to stuff. And so you gotta be careful. You gotta be smart and wise and think about that. When you are born, first off, maybe someone wins or loses with good or bad parents, and then you win or lose with a good or bad sibling, or you get to go to good schools, or you get to go to, you have a good life, you get to go to college, whatever. Or maybe then it depends. Maybe I didn't have money to go to college. Maybe I did have money to go to college. Maybe I was able to get into some sort of other avenue to do really well, and then start progressing career. And then you get to your career, and like me, I'm an airline pilot. So you start off as getting your pilot's license, and you start as getting your flight instructor, and then you teach, or you do some other silly job kinda till you get some hours. And then once you have enough time, you go to the airlines, and suddenly you make a lot of money, and you have a good job, you fly good planes, you start to live kind of the life you always were working towards. But it's not like an overnight thing. On the other hand, sometimes you have to remember that when you work really hard like that, sometimes it's not always going to work out. Sometimes you got to be patient and realize that, oh, hey, this one thing didn't work for me, so now I need to start looking and transitioning onto the next, and just being patient. Sometimes that sucks. In my own personal life, like I just said, I'm an airline pilot. I worked at the regionals. Well, let's back up. I worked as a flight instructor, and I hated it. I hated being a flight instructor. It wasn't like it was the worst job ever exactly or anything, but I didn't want to be a flight instructor. I didn't enjoy it, really. I enjoyed flying airplanes and all, but then it was like, I don't know. It's like, it didn't ruin it per se, but it didn't make it nearly as enjoyable as it should have been. And so I had to wait my turn. And I kept thinking, man, I'm sick of waiting, God. I'm like, God, I prayed, I'm working so hard, why is it just sucking for so... Oh, there's a deer right there, right in front of me. Look for more. But, run off in the woods, but, then you take your turn. And so I waited, and I put in my work, and eventually I got my call, went to the regionals. I thought life was going to be a million times better, and in a lot of ways it was. It really did get a million times better. But in other ways, after so long, everything gets old, kinda. And I was like, oh, now I'm starting to forget all these great new aspects of my job. And now I'm starting to see all these other aspects of it that I don't like as much. And then you kind of think, wow, what do I do now? Because everything that I ever was hoped for, now I'm not super happy with. And maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just not what you expected. And then, so I switched. I went to a more major airline. Now I'm a 737 pilot, and I was pretty happy as an FO. I was making good money. I had a good quality of life. I was going all the places I wanted, getting to see cool stuff, getting to do cool things, and overall it really wasn't too bad. I was pretty content, but I kept trying to get on with a different airline. I'm still looking to maybe switch my job, and so I was looking, and no one was really calling me. Delta showed some interest, but then told, it didn't go there. And then, so now I was like, all right, well, what do you do? If no one wants you, what does every airline pilot in the history of the world kind of just tell you? Go get some PIC time, go get more experience. All right, this is not great here. But the first thing they'll tell you is go get PIC time. And then that's how you get called. That's how you go get out. That's how you move on. That's how you progress. And well, alright, sorry, just majorly stuck here. Oh, about to drop it. Super tall grass, bad idea. Oh, give me a second. But you need to go be a captain to progress sometimes. Some people don't. Some people are super lucky and you can be an FO for wherever, even a regional, and suddenly Delta or United, American, whatever calls you and you get your dream job, Southwest, Alaska, who knows, and you get to go right there. And for me, that's not the case. For me, I'm upgrading right now, so I'm going through Captain Upgrade. I'm studying, and it sucks, and it's super stressful, and it's a ton of work. You know, it's not like I exactly wanted to do this, you know, for the money or for whatever. I did it because I knew, you know, if I want to get further in life, that I have to do what everyone just kind of inherently knows what to do, right? If you want to keep taking that next step, you have to put in the work, and so I am, and hopefully it pays off. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, who knows. You know, a million things go wrong, and you need everything to go right for it to go well, you know, and that's just kind of how life is. So many people just think that they pray and they pray and they pray for this or that. You know, I could pray every day to God forever to get me that job at Delta. Maybe he answers the prayer. You know, God answers prayers, right? No, not yet, and yes. And sometimes it's on a timeline that's very different from our humanly short-term, not been around this place all too long yet timeline. And so it can be hard, you know, it can be really hard. Sometimes I think I want God to work. Woo! Got a lot of air there. I think I want God to work overnight. You know, today I want to wake up tomorrow and it be in my email. And sometimes that's just not how it is. Sometimes God, he wants you, you know, he says, okay, I'll give you that, but you have to do this. You know, maybe he says, okay, once you're a captain and you put in that work, then I'll grant you that job you asked for. So it's like, sometimes God can just answer a prayer in like a miraculous, unimaginable way, right? It's not unheard of, it's not impossible. There's nothing holding that back. You know, I'm not saying God doesn't do miracles here, but I'm also saying is sometimes the things we ask for do require a little bit out of us. It's not all on God's shoulders. It's not all his job. It's not 100% him to grant you your every waking wish and you not have to lift a finger. Sometimes you got to do a little work. And for me, you know, I'm living that. I'm being patient with God. I pray, I ask, you know, I trust. But it requires work. And maybe part of, you know, God answering that prayer is, okay, well, yeah, I'll give you that job at Delta after you upgrade and after, you know, you get through and you learn all this, you new experience, and now you're going to go there and you'll be way more successful. Or maybe, you know, whatever, you wouldn't have been successful without that experience prior, or this and that. And who knows, you know, I'm not to say, I don't know. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but sometimes things get frustrating. And I'm just using that as an example, right? I'm not saying apply that to whatever you want in your own life and make it make sense, right? But life's so complicated. And it gets so old sometimes waiting, being patient. But a big thing I like to remember is I kind of enjoy the suck a little bit, right? You know, it's not always the destination as much as it is the journey to get there sometimes. Like when I was flying the little planes now I look back and I think, man, I wish I would have, instead of just going up every day and spending all my money in the pattern work, doing all this dumb stuff, I wish I would have flown a ton of places, got hotels, you know, whatever, like done my money better or my planning better and enjoyed all my GA experience. When I was at the regional, man, maybe I should have flown to Japan a bunch or Europe or whatever on my Delta One, those fancy tickets, and I could do that for free. Maybe I should have enjoyed the regionals better. You know, maybe it was me, I was just stupid and I didn't put in the work, and that's why, or I was just inexperienced and so it was harder or whatever, I just didn't like it as much. You know, there's always a million different things that come about in life, and it's hard. You know, life's hard, life's complicating. Life is not the most forgiving thing in the world, but you have to, you know, enjoy where you are when you are. You don't always just expect life to be perfect. Sometimes when you're in the, you know, that transitional phase, you should enjoy it. You know, God says live every day, you know, be grateful for every day, be happy all the time, you know, the journey is so much more than the destination. Like, just getting to the airlines, getting to here, becoming a captain, all this, the journey has such a story, and it's so much work behind it. It wasn't an overnight thing for me, you know. It's a lot of work. Some people it's less work, some people it's more, whatever, you know. I don't care. It's just, it's something that, you know, you kind of look at it in your life and you're like, wow, I can't believe I've come this far, or this or that, you know, whatever you want to say. But if you're miserable all the way, you know, forever, you're miserable all the way there until you finally get to Delta and you're a captain on a wide body airplane going all over, you know, you're just gonna live a miserable life. You're just wasting so much of your time being unhappy and upset and whatever else that you could have just spent enjoying it. Yeah, it might be better in 10 years whenever that works out for you, or this or that, you know, life really might be better, but enjoy today, you know, enjoy the path along the way. Be patient. Don't just expect everything immediately and hope that, you know, hope that one day that brighter day will come. You'll enjoy it for what it is. I took a big break from riding motorcycles for a long time because I thought, you know, I was gonna crash and get hurt on them. I'm kind of a wild person, you know. I was out jumping this like 10 feet in the air off this ramp in this random school bus parking lot, and this school bus driver, like some random guy, came over and just like, he very nicely just kind of waved me out, and so I just rode by, waved at him, left. Right, you know, maybe if I was not who I am on this very day, I would have been a real goon or been problematic or something and got myself in trouble, or maybe I would have tried to hit the jump way too hard and gotten hurt or whatever. Maybe I'd be on a 1000cc race bike like I used to be and out going super fast and crash, you know, who knows. But in that transitional time that I kind of stepped away from riding on the street a lot, I decided, you know, like, I'm gonna enjoy my time, so I bought a mountain bike. Yeah, it's not the most fun thing in the world, it's nowhere near as cool as this. I would take this every day of the week over a mountain bike. I mean, I don't know, I can't even totally compare the two. One is almost like a workout tool, a health tool that I mix in with my hobbies so I can enjoy it and have fun and whatever, and this is like my true passion. But you know, I picked up other hobbies. I did a ton of shooting, guns. For like 3 years, you know, I rode my mountain bike, I rode dirt bikes, only off-road. I did whatever. I didn't really screw around on the street because I said, yeah, you know, high chance I'm just gonna hurt myself, and being a pilot, I can't risk that. And now that I'm a little older and more responsible, and I ride a dual sport. This is a KTM 690, super powerful, crazy hooligan bike, but yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm into. I utilize it, but I try to utilize it responsibly. I don't ride in super busy traffic. I cruise around back roads and gravel. Yeah, I could get hurt, but I'm minimizing the risk. You know, I'm risking, you know, getting a broken leg or slightly hurt compared to, you know, on a 1000, you know, killing myself. You know, no 0% survival chance to, you know, like at 80%, 70%, who knows, you know, whatever. I just take it for what it is, right? I'm not going to dig too deep in it. If you can't draw conclusions and, you know, pick up what I'm putting down, then this is not the video for you. You have to have some your own ability to think to follow along with what I try to say. But what I am saying is, it's just sometimes just enjoy every day. You know, sometimes things suck. That's fine. You know, I'm going through upgrade. Well, it sucks. I don't like sitting in class. I'm a pilot. You know, I'm like a hillbilly redneck white trash kind of guy. You know, I like motorcycles, dirt bikes. I don't like fancy food. You know, they had a big captain upgrade dinner, and they had all the executives, the management, like the CEOs, all this stuff. They come to your dinner and they pat you on your back and they give you your little epaulets. Oh, there's a deer. Woo. See, risk and reward. I was not going very fast. So I would have crashed at like 35 instead of going like 100. I don't know, but you know, I looked at it and I say, not for me. You know, I'm not interested in going. Like, I absolutely appreciate you willing to take me to the fanciest restaurant downtown, pick up the bill at $100 set of food, let me bring someone with me even, and all this. But it's like, I don't want to go there and kiss butt to management and all these higher ups and do this, you know, corporate style talk. You know, I follow Jesus, and I talk pretty clean and stuff like that. but I don't want to play silly games. You know, I'm not into that stuff. If that's your life, you know, that's to each his own. That's not me. And so I didn't like the fancy food. You know what I ate instead of going to my captain dinner? I ate Velveeta macaroni and cheese that I made on the stove with a microwave can of sweet peas that I then mixed into the Velveeta macaroni and cheese, and I ate that. That's like, I used to like that meal as a kid, and I still make it as 26 years old, captain at an airline. I could have gone with my own money, bought whatever food I wanted. I rode my dirt bike around, had a blast yesterday riding, made a video, went home, rested, ate dinner, whatever. This guy won't wave back. He did. Harley guy for the win. What a shock. But, you know, and I just lived my life, and I was happier that way. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to go. I obviously appreciate going and whatever, but, you know, it wasn't for me, so I didn't go. And it's not that I was, you know, upset about it. I absolutely appreciate them doing it, and it's great that they do that. Some people, this is a really big deal for them, and that dinner and all for bringing their wives and stuff like that means a huge amount to them. For me, it just doesn't teach his own value, right? Some people, that's like a big highlight of their career, and to me, I wanted to eat Velveeta macaroni and cheese and ride a dirt bike around, right? That was my priorities. You know, I could have, you know, everyone can do whatever. We all are on a different journey. We're all from a different walk, right? All on our different paths, and it's perfectly fine to just be happy with where you are, what you have. You know, maybe you're an FO at an airline and you wish you were a captain. At least, you know, you're making good money. You have a job, you have a cool job, you know, you're going to do the same thing as all the other captains, but it's honestly a little easier and everything. You get the weight off your shoulders, you can really look out the window, and, you know, I enjoyed being an FO to a point. Sometimes I didn't, sometimes I did, but I always knew I had a great job. All I'm saying is if you're just patient, you know, some work, the good will come. It's the Bible. Jesus talks about all the time in the Bible. He says you'll reap what you sow. And I'm no farmer, but I know what that means, right? And it means you plant a seed in the ground, and whatever you plant and whatever you water and whatever that you take care of, that seed will grow, and then you get it. You know, you get whatever becomes of that seed. You get whatever, you know, just whatever it is. You pick up what you put down, type of thing, right? And all I'm saying is, if you live a sad life, you're miserable all the time, and you pout, and you just never have a good day, you know, you're defeating the happiness in life. You know, every day is a good day. We're always happy to be alive. You know, there's really nothing that horrible in your life. You could be poor, you can be dumb and stupid, you make a bunch of decisions. Well, you still have the opportunity to start making better ones today and turn your life around. And you know, it's one piece at a time. Jesus says, you know, he's just to be patient, to wait. Your turn will come, but it's not a magic trick. Sometimes it is, you know, sometimes it isn't. Do your part, and then you can expect, you know, if you do your part and that prayer is not answered, oh well, move on to the next. You know, it wasn't in the cards. That's fine. If you pray to God, you put in your work, and it all comes true, you know, don't forget to thank God that your prayer is answered. So many of my prayers, Jesus answers for me when you know, I pray something and I pray it for all the years of my life, and then it's somehow that prayer is answered. Let's say you're asking for a girlfriend forever, but you go look and you look and you look, and you have to awkwardly go out and meet people and talk to girls and all this, and it's horrible. And then one day you finally, you know, after all those years of praying, you finally meet a girl. You know, that's an answered prayer from God. He put that girl in your life. Maybe that's her, maybe it's not, you know, whatever. But all I'm saying is that's an answered prayer. Don't think, oh, because you had to go talk to girls and you got rejected by a couple, that means suddenly Jesus didn't answer your prayer. It's kind of the total opposite. Jesus did answer your prayer. You just didn't recognize it when he did. It's a couple, not a Harley guy. As I get older, I'm starting to think they're cooler, but still not there all the way. You know, give me 10 more years and I'll probably be on this channel making videos of being on a Harley, and someone's gonna post that. But all I'm saying is things come and go. You know, life is life, and who knows what's gonna happen. You know, who knows where life goes, who knows what who knows what's going to happen in life? You never know tomorrow. You never know today. You never truly know what's going on or whatever. Just be patient. Just wait. Just see what comes and see what God does in your life. You never really know, right? You never know. And God answers prayers. Remember, it's not always on your timeline. So just being patient, enjoying the suck along the way, it does so much for you, because it'll improve your life in ways you can't imagine if you just enjoy the journey instead of just staring at the destination, because when you get there it may not be that great, you know. Alright, sorry to ramble. I think I need to harass some Hogley guys here, doing wheelies and such, making them hate normal bikers even more. I guess I'm not really a normal biker, but whatever. The Supermoto Squad. Alright, let's call that a day. It's getting too weird. Alright, well, see you guys. Enjoy the video. You know, if you have any comments, questions, you want me to make a video about anything, leave it down there and I'll try to do it for you. I'll try to respond. Make a video about whatever you want. Answer any prayer, you know, things you would ask God. You know, I mean, not like that, but like, I'll make a video over whatever you want. So, it'll help you. That'll be it for today, guys. I'll see ya, and see ya.